So let's talk about the ethical issues relating to the therapeutic use of stem cells. Therapeutic use means the use of stem cells in therapy, so basically to treat the patients. And that's an interesting and long topic because there is, of course, one important argument for the use of stem cells in therapy. And this one important argument, I mean, it's kind of obvious and clear, is you're able to improve the health of a patient. Now, of course, stem cells do not work for all diseases, but there are several of them where scientists have already found stem cells to be very useful. And however, there is also some ethical debate going on, and this ethical debate depends to a very large extent on the source of these stem cells. Now, where do they come from? Okay, and there are two main sources. One source is so-called the adult stem cells. These are stem cells that can be found in grown-up people, and there's still stem cells around in our body that are there to repair body tissue, for example. And those stem cells generally are not so controversial, but there is essentially another type of stem cell that I'd like to talk about. And these are the so-called the embryonic stem cells. And these are somewhat more controversial. And this is the reason why in many countries there are laws that regulate the use of stem cells, and especially of embryonic stem cells. Because what happens is the following, and I'm just going to use this here now as a little model here. Look, this here, this should symbolize here that those are little cut out pieces here. These are individual cells, and this here should be an early human embryo. Okay. So it's essentially like a ball of cells. Originally, there was only one cell, a zygote, a fertilized egg cell, and it started to divide, and now we have an embryo here, which is this ball of cells. And then basically what you do is, because these are stem cells now, okay, you have the possibility to differentiate and form other cell types. And now basically when we have that, then of course we can go ahead and we can pick it apart. We can take a cell out, and we can basically use those cells now to treat people. So we can inject them, for example, into some patients, and these cells will then grow in the patients, and they might grow, let's say, new nerve cells there, and they might improve the situation for the patient. But you know what happens to the embryo? Well, the embryo is not there anymore. It dies, obviously, because we've taken it apart. Yeah, and this is essentially the reason why the use of embryonic stem cells is seen as being problematic by some people, because after all, this is a human embryo with a unique genetic identity. Okay, if we choose to use and make those embryos, in a petri dish, we mix sperm cells and egg cells together, and we make those embryos in a process called in vitro fertilization. And then, of course, we can use them, and we can pick it apart, and then we can use them for whatever we need it. And this is seen as problematic. Okay, there are basically. That's basically the issue here. The argument against the use of embryonic stem cells in therapy is basically, if you use an embryo, you're ending its life. And the question that we now have is, and that's a little bit now the debate going on, is well, if you're ending the life of an embryo, is this actually killing a human being? Or not? Or yes? Or Well, actually, you are ending the life of an embryo, which then actually will form a human being. So in that sense, if you're very strict about it, yes. However, the question is more complex than this, because an early embryo like this, which is made of stem cells, does it really have all of the characteristics of an adult human being? You see, no, not really. Yeah. So where do we draw the line now? From which point onwards should an embryo be protected as human life? This is the interesting question, yeah. So there is, you see, we come very quickly from the question: should stem cells be used, or embryonic stem cells be used in therapy? Yes or no? We very quickly come to the point that kind of questions of what is actually the nature of human beings, what makes us human, and from what point onward does it have enough human qualities, this embryo over here, that we should protect it. Because what we're weighing right now is we're weighing the rights of an embryo to the rights of a patient. Okay, so like the one that I had over here, the health of a patient here. Yeah, It's also obviously a human being, yeah, also who has certain rights. So how do we weigh those two, those two viewpoints? Okay, so basically some arguments and counter arguments now. Well, what are some counter arguments if you say, okay, it's not okay to use an embryo, okay? What are some counter arguments? And I'm not saying that all of those counter arguments are equally good, okay? And I'm also going to give a counter argument to a counter argument. Yeah? Well, the early stage embryo, I just mentioned this, they are not really fully human. They're just a ball of cells, okay? This doesn't have full human qualities here. I mean, come on, yeah? 16 cells, I mean, yeah, that's not fully human. Yeah, but if you use this argument, then the question that I'm asking is, am I not also just a ball of cells? Yeah, a slightly more complex ball of cells. Yeah, so from what point on do you actually draw the line? Okay, it's a gray zone. There is a developmental process, and where's the cutoff line where you say, okay, from this point onwards we can, kill it, take it apart, and from this point onward not. Where's this line? There is no, during development, there is no clear point where you could say that, okay? Okay, you can say, well, maybe it's the ability to feel pain. So early stage embryos, like these over here, they cannot feel pain because they do not have a nervous system yet. So is this the reason? Okay, the ability to feel pain, does this make it worthy of being protected? That's a good point, really. If yes, then what about animals, other animals that are killed by humans for food? We know that they are able to feel pain. Yeah, is this then now, you see what I mean? And the second question is, well, I mean, the nerve cells, they start to develop. It's also a gradual process, so there's also no clear cutoff line here. Or yet another argument is, and that's another thing here, well, during in vitro fertilization, basically when couples have a problem conceiving a child, you can do IVF, in vitro fertilization, where you mix sperm and egg cells together in a petri dish, and sometimes you have leftover embryos, okay? So there are many more produced and they're not needed, so let's use them, let's make good use of them, right, for treatment. They're frozen in the freezer in the hospital. Let's just use them. And what's the problem with that? Well, there is also a problem here. If we say, okay, these embryos are human, then it's not okay to use a human as a tool. That's Kantian ethics or deontological ethics. I mean, otherwise I could say, okay, I mean, if there are 10 people that need transplant organs, why not kill one person and use the organs to save 10 people? That's not okay, obviously, because you cannot use one person as a tool to help others, even if it helps the others, right? And that's basically here as well. I mean, we've got embryos there, and we're going to now basically take them apart, pick them apart, because, so they should be good for something, you know? That's a little bit like saying, well, a person should be good for something, you know? But then again, counter-argument to the counter-argument to the counter-argument. Yeah, but these are not fully developed humans anyway, yeah? So why it's not okay either. It's morally also not okay to put a ball of cells on the same level as a grown-up human being or as an adult, you know, or as a baby even. Huh? So Yeah, you see, so we are going back and forth, and that's why it's a controversial debate. And the good news is that now with the discovery of so-called the adult stem cells, which are stem cells that can be found in grown-up people, this would actually resolve many of the problems. And as a last point, simply to challenge you a little bit, I'd like to tell you another interesting thing here. What happens if scientists are now able to take some skin cells here, okay, and put them in a petri dish or in a test tube and add some chemicals to it to convert those skin cells back into embryonic stem cells, embryos. Let's say that we're somehow able to convert those skin cells by adding the right chemicals back into an embryo. Should they then have also human rights? Should those converted skin cells then have the same rights as a human being, a grown human being, or as an embryo? Okay, that was conceived by in vitro fertilization. It's an interesting question as well. And we see that as technology and science progresses, there are more and more issues that start to appear. And I personally consider this very fascinating because it kind of shows how society develops and how our thinking develops and how also opinions in a society change over time. And then sometimes we should not be surprised. Technology and scientific progress goes so fast that even the laws and the ethical debate lags behind a little bit. And that's why I consider it so important to talk about these issues. And that's why, indeed, these issues about stem cell therapy and stem cell in research is, of course, an important topic that is quite debated and discussed a lot by, not only by scientists, but also by ethics commissions and so on. But I think I got my point across, at least I hope I did. And I'm going to leave it at that and wish you all the best. And maybe you can find more arguments for and against it. See you around next time. Bye-bye.